We are talking about the conservative ideas of Dr. Israr, tracing their historical sources. So, in part two, I talked about traditionalists like Imam Hanbal, Abul Hasan Ashari, Imam Ghazali. Imam Ghazali was the most dominant figures among these conservative, and he cited his own personal example, asserting that there was a time when he was more or less deviating from the path of religion, and then God somehow, he claimed to have found some divine light that sort of urged him to follow the path of religion. And this is when he started saying that such incidents cannot be explained in a rational way. Naturally, if he had said that, people would have argued, uh, that that's not possible rationally. So, in order to perhaps, according to his critics, get rid of such objections, he said that this is divine light. And naturally, maybe some might describe it as hallucination, or maybe illusion. Anybody could say anything that I have experienced this thing, but when you talk about in the world of science, in the world of rationality, in the world of reason, you have to have reason, logic, and arguments. And this is not the case of, if somebody say for every matter in life, you do want your senses to be satisfied, you do want to verify things through your sensory organ. If a person says that he has just uh, seen a terrible animal, the second question would be where, when, and how did you see that? So for every matter of life, you need verification through your sensory organ. You want logical arguments. If somebody says that I jumped down from a 50-story building and nothing happened to me, naturally people will raise questions. If somebody says that I can see some metaphysical light, or some strange light, and 100 other people can't see that, so he would be described as liar, or as someone who is not trustworthy. Ghazali was later on criticized by uh, many, even scientists. Like one American scientist accused him of uh, sort of having a reverse gear. He reversed everything. He reversed the rationalist tradition. Some accused him of describing mathematics as devilish stuff, or pure devil. But there are other who argue that he was in a way Kant of Islamic world. Like Kant say that the world of phenomena could be seen through our sensory organ, or its existence could be proved through our sensory organ. So there is a world of senses, phenomenology. There is a world that can be understood through our sensory organ, through our sensory organs, what he called phenomenology. But there is another world, that is nomenology, which cannot be understood, or which cannot be interpreted. So there are those as well, but a number of scientists believe that Ghazali was anti rationality, anti reasoning. And then most of the traditionalists, especially, followed, unfortunately, only those aspects of Ghazali's philosophy that talked against reason. But the sort of institute that some people say he had it, like Darsin Nizami, that was established, it is believed, by Nizam al Mulk Tusi, who was the Grand Wazir, or more or less Prime Minister of the Seljuk. Seljuks were themselves very tyrant. So this is another reason as to why Darsin Nizami system was launched, and what were the intentions of Seljuk rulers or Nizam al-Mulk Tusi. Like General Zia carried out Islamization. That does not mean that he was sincere to religion, or he was very pious man. Naturally, he must have had his own intention, his own reasons for using religion as a political tool to perpetuate his power. So General Zia's policy could not be understood, and even today they cannot be understood without without understanding his intentions. So his primary intention was to perpetuate his dictatorial rule, and naturally, Seljuk did not want any critical voices. When you start uh, thinking on religious matter in a critical way, that critical thinking will not be confined to religious spheres only. For instance, you could see in Europe what happened, starting from John Hus and even before that, Thomas Aquinas and other people, and later on Martin Luther. He started questioning the domain of clergy, the power of clergy, the authority of clergy. But later on, people also started questioning the authority of the king, the authority of the priest, the authority of the princes, the authority of the royal family, and the toppled government as well. So Seljuk did not want critical thinking, because once this critical thinking, this critical approach was adopted in religious matters, then tomorrow people might question the authority of the Seljuk rulers, who were tyrant in many ways, who were very dictatorial in many ways. And by the way, many of them were fighting among themselves as well. They were striking deals with Christian rulers against their own so-called Muslim brothers or Muslim rulers. The second aspect was, if we look at history, that critical thinking was undermining the authorities of mullah and traditionalists, and they were unable to argue with rationalists. They were unable to come up with cogent arguments. Of course, there were arguments. If you look at the debates of these two school of thoughts, then you will notice that most of the fatwas were issued by the traditionalists, because they could not offer any logic. They could not counter the arguments of the rationalists in a logical way. So they described them as heretic, infidel, kafir, and stuff like that, in order to silence their voice. Now, why this historical background is important? Because today, when Dr. Israr Ahmed more or less talks about fatalism, when, by the way, some people are trying to put a spin on the doctrine of Ghazali and Abul Hasan Ashari and other people, saying that they try to mystify their concept in a way, saying that no, Ghazali said that intentions are still yours. You have free will, in a sense that you have your own intention, you intend, and then God, you know, does that thing. So God, in a way, in legal sense, some critics might point out, is a complicit. For instance, you intend to commit a murder, and then God creates resources. Rationalists would say that God is good in his entirety. There's nothing in God but goodness. So why should God be doing any bad thing? While these traditionalists would say, no, whether you are doing bad thing or good thing, it is all determined by God. God has already written it. And then rationalists would say, so today when Israr Sahab in his speeches talk about fatalism, that this world is examination or God is testing you, he tested some people by giving them wealth, and might be testing some other people by not giving them wealth, and you should resignate, or you should have a life of resignation. This is what is the argument of the Christian priest during feudal times. If you look at, they would also say that this is what Hindu Pandit would tell poor people, and this is what Dr. Star would tell in many of his speeches, though some of his speeches, are very contradictory, like especially where he talked about internally managed capitalism or managed capitalism or controlled capitalism. So there are contradictory things. If this world is a testing place, then why should there be any managed capitalism or internally controlled capitalism or controlled capitalism to extend some sort of help and succor to poor people? So this historical background is important, because since the establishment of Darse Nizami, you see a number of scholars. They even Ghazali went to the extent of justifying the rule of the tyrant on the excuse that it's better than anarchy that you have a tyrant. And it is one of the reasons that many mullah endorsed dictatorial regimes. Look at in our own country, General Zia, General Yahya, Ayub Khan, you know, they were all endorsed more or less by religious parties. Of course, there were some exceptions. Maulana Maududi at one point opposed Ayub Khan, but religious parties did endorse the dictatorship of General Zia in one way or another way. Some of them went to the extent of allying with the monstrous dictator, and some of them opted to be part of his shura, including Dr. Israr Ahmed. So, if you want to understand this historical background, you need to understand when they justify dictatorial regime ke obey God and obey the rulers, right? This is also so both rationalist and traditionalist, they would quote the Holy Quran. So that's why it's important that you should listen to both of them, and then you may draw your own conclusion instead of just insisting, no, whatever Dr. Star is saying, that is according to Quran. You also need to understand, like Wasil bin Atta and other people, other rationalists, Muslim scientists, those who believed in free will, listen to both of them, study both of them, then draw your own conclusion. So, this is part 3, and we would still continue part 4. And now we would come to the interpretation of religion and the way it affects people.